Tucked away in California's unforgiving desert, beyond the reach of laws and modern conveniences, lies a place unlike any other called Slab City, often referred to as the last free place in America. Here, there are no police, no government, and no rent. Just a rugged, self-made community of wanderers, artists, outcasts, homeless, and rebels seeking refuge from society's rules. But is this a utopia of true freedom, or just chaos disguised as paradise? Join us as we step inside Slab City, where the American dream takes on an entirely different meaning. History and background of Slab City. Before the United States officially joined World War II, the Marine Corps wanted a place to train soldiers for field and anti-aircraft artillery. They picked a spot near San Diego that planes could easily reach after taking off from aircraft carriers. To build the training area, the government got 631 acres of land. They decided to name the base after Brigadier General Robert Henry Dunlap, a Marine Corps officer. Once the construction was finished, Camp Dunlap officially opened on October 15, 1942. The camp had all the basic necessities, like buildings, running water, roads, and a sewage system. It was actively used for 3 years during the war. By 1949, most military operations there had stopped, but a small group of staff stayed behind until the base was completely shut down. By 1956, every building had been taken down, but the concrete slabs where they once stood were left behind. The place we now know as Slab City was originally part of the artillery training range for the camp. Some of the first people to live there were veterans who had worked on the base. Later, others moved in, including drifters and people in recreational vehicles looking for free camping spots outside Palm Springs. People living there now call themselves slabbies, while visitors are often called normies. On October 6, 1961, the Department of Defense handed the land over to the state of California. They decided the land wasn't needed anymore. The transfer didn't include any rules about how the land should be used or restored. By that time, all the old Camp Dunlap buildings were gone, leaving only the concrete slabs. Later, a law was passed that required any money made from this land to go to the California State Teachers' Retirement System. Slab City became much more well-known after an article about it was published in Trailer Life and RV magazine around 1984. According to a report in the San Diego Reader from 1988, there were only about 600 to 700 RVs in the area around 1983. By the time someone was interviewed in March of 1988, they guessed there were nearly 2,000 trailers parked there. One of the early residents, Leonard Knight, gained attention for creating the colorful art installation called Salvation Mountain. His work was even featured in Sean Penn's movie Into the Wild, which came out in 2007. Knight's obituary shared that he spent almost 30 years building the mountain. He used adobe and donated paint to create it, and worked on it every single day. He lived simply, sleeping in the back of a pickup truck near the mountain, without electricity or running water. In October of 2018, Smithsonian Magazine described Slab City as a squatter's paradise. Locals consider it to be one of America's last free places. The article explained that many people there value their privacy, and some are looking to disappear entirely. It also pointed out how the desert offers the perfect place for people who want to avoid being found. Slab City community and culture. The culture and way of life in Slab City are as unusual as the place itself. Slabbers have built a lively and diverse community focused on being self-reliant, creative, and supportive of one another. Within Slab City, there are a few well-known groups, each with its own vibe and role in shaping the overall culture. One of the most famous parts of Slab City is the artistic community surrounding Salvation Mountain. This huge, colorful art piece, created by Leonard Knight, is a symbol of the creativity and free spirit that defines the area. Artists here make all kinds of things, like paintings, sculptures, and even performance art, often using recycled materials. Their work isn't just a way to express themselves, it also helps attract visitors and brings in some income. Another important group in Slab City is the snowbirds. These are seasonal residents who come to Slab City during the winter to escape the freezing temperatures in other places. Many of them are retirees, and they add a different energy to the community. They help the local economy by spending money on goods and services and often volunteer to improve living conditions in the area. The snowbirds show how appealing Slab City's alternative lifestyle and sense of freedom can be. Then there are the off-gridders. These residents have chosen to live without depending on modern systems like electricity or running water. They use solar panels, collect rainwater, and practice sustainable living to meet their needs. Their focus on self-reliance and simple living is a big part of what makes Slab City unique. The off-gridders often share their knowledge and skills with others, creating a tight-knit community based on helping one another. Slab City also has a lively community of musicians and performers who help make the place feel even more unique. The Range, an open-air music venue, hosts weekly shows and concerts where both local and visiting musicians can perform. This adds to the fun and creative vibe of Slab City, giving everyone a chance to enjoy live music in a one-of-a-kind spot. The traditions in Slab City reflect the residents' love for freedom and their desire to live outside the box. One tradition that brings people together is the communal potluck dinners held at the Range. These get-togethers allow residents and visitors to share meals, tell stories, and enjoy music, strengthening the bond between everyone. The potlucks are a great reminder of how important community and support are in Slab City. Another tradition that might seem strange to outsiders is the practice of scavenging, or dumpster diving. Many slabbers make use of discarded items for everything from building materials to clothing or even food. It's not just about making do, it's about being resourceful and showing how much the community values sustainability. Scavenging is a way to cut down on waste and make the most of what's available. The annual Slab City Prom is another fun tradition that highlights the community's creativity and lighthearted spirit. Residents dress up in their best clothes, often homemade or secondhand, and come together to dance and celebrate. It's a carefree event that gives everyone a chance to come together and express themselves in a joyful and inclusive setting. Adding even more to the character of the place, Slab City also has a few landmarks that hold cultural meaning for the community. Crime and survival in Slab City. Crime in Slab City is a big concern, with common offenses like petty theft, narcotic use and trafficking, and even murders. A lot of these problems are tied to the fact that many people come and go, and there aren't many official job opportunities. One example of the violence in the area is the tragic murder of Poe Delwyn Black, a 21-year-old transgender man, in May 2021. Poe's body was found in a canal north of Slab City, and an autopsy showed that he had been stabbed several times, including in very personal areas. This brutal crime is still unsolved, and it shows how dangerous life in the community can be. In another case, the body of Charles Onvert Pierce, a 54-year-old man, was discovered in July 2024. He was found near Dully's Lane and Happy Lane, both locations in Slab City. His body showed signs that he had been harmed, and the Imperial County Sheriff's Office confirmed that they believed it was a homicide. Pierce had been missing, and his family couldn't get in touch with him. The investigation is still happening, and so far, no arrests have been made. Besides these high-profile cases, Slab City also has a reputation for narcotic-related crimes. The area's lack of official law enforcement and its remote location make it a place where narcotics, especially methamphetamine, are common. Many of the residents battle addiction, and this leads to other crimes like theft and violence as people try to feed their habits. There is no police department within Slab City. Instead, the Imperial County Sheriff's Office is in charge of law enforcement and regularly patrols the area to keep things in check. Despite this, many issues are handled by the community itself, often without formal legal action. The lack of an official legal system means people rely on self-policing and mutual agreements to solve problems and deal with crimes. The legal system in Slab City is pretty different from what you'd find in other places. While federal and state laws still apply, enforcement is more relaxed. The people there handle things in their own way, mostly by self-policing and working out problems through mutual agreements. Punishments for crimes aren't set in stone and can change depending on how serious the offense is and how the community reacts. In some cases, if someone commits a really serious crime, they might be reported to the authorities. But for smaller issues, people usually try to sort things out themselves with mediation or help from others in the community. So the big question is, does Slab City have any future prospects that could give its residents hope for a better life? Or is it stuck in its lawless ways for good? Let's take a look at what might come next. Geography and climate of Slab City. Just west of Slab City is the Salton Sea, a large, salty lake that wasn't planned but was actually formed by accident in the early 1900s. This lake is a big deal for the area, as it creates a unique environment with water in the middle of a dry desert. If you travel about 4 miles southwest of Slab City, you'll reach a small town called Nyland. It's the closest spot where people from Slab City can find some basic supplies and services. On the eastern side of Slab City are the Chocolate Mountains, a rugged and dry mountain range. These mountains are known for having minerals and are also used for military training, which adds to the feeling of being in a remote and isolated place. To the south is the Imperial Valley, a busy farming region with rich soil and lots of irrigation systems. Slab City has a desert climate, which means it's very hot and dry with almost no rain. The weather has a big effect on how people live there. Summers can be brutal, with daytime temperatures often going over 100 degrees Fahrenheit and sometimes even reaching 120 degrees Fahrenheit. This heat can be really dangerous for people without proper shade or ways to cool down. Winters, on the other hand, are much easier to handle, with daytime temperatures ranging from 60 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit. Rain is very rare, with less than 3 inches falling in an entire year. When it does rain, it's usually during short, strong storms that can cause flash flooding. The air is usually pretty dry too, which makes the heat feel even worse in summer. However, because the Salton Sea is nearby, the humidity can go up, especially in cooler months. This mix of extreme heat, dryness, and occasional storms makes Slab City's environment tough to live in, but also unique in its own way. Slab City hasn't dealt with big natural disasters like earthquakes or major floods, but the extreme heat is a serious challenge for the people living there. The biggest natural threat in the area comes from heat waves. When the heat drags on for days, it can lead to problems like heat exhaustion, heat stroke, and other illnesses caused by the heat. People living in Slab City have to be careful, making sure they drink enough water and find ways to stay cool when the temperatures climb. Sometimes, though not often, flash floods happen during strong thunderstorms. Since the land is flat and there aren't many plants to soak up the rain, water can build up quickly and cause temporary flooding in lower areas. These floods don't last long, but they can still damage property and roads. Another issue caused by the dry environment is dust storms. These storms, which usually happen when it's windy, can make it hard to see, irritate your lungs, and make driving dangerous. Now, what's the economy like in a place that's known for being rent-free? We answer that question next. Economy of Slab City. Slab City doesn't have a regular economy like most towns. There are no big businesses, factories, or farms. Instead, the people living there, called slabbers, find small and creative ways to get by. They mainly rely on trading and bartering to meet their needs. For example, someone good at fixing cars might repair a neighbor's vehicle in exchange for food or other supplies. This kind of trade is super important in a place where money isn't used much. Most of the jobs in Slab City are a bit different from what you'd find elsewhere. Some residents depend on government support, like Social Security or disability payments, to pay for basic needs. Others focus on creative work, like making art. Slab City is actually well known for its art scene. People there make and sell crafts, paintings, and sculptures. One of the most famous examples is Salvation Mountain, a giant art piece created by Leonard Knight. Art and creativity play a huge role in the community's way of life and how they earn money. Since there's no formal trash collection in Slab City, many residents reuse or recycle things that other people throw away. They build structures, create art, or even sell recyclable items using salvaged materials. Tourism also helps the community. During the cooler winter months, a lot of visitors come to see the area. Some slabbers make money by giving tours, selling souvenirs, or renting out camping spots to tourists. These visitors bring in a bit of extra income during that time of year, which helps support the community. People in Slab City have been talking about ways to bring in more money and improve life for everyone, but these ideas often face pushback. The community values its freedom and unique lifestyle, so any plans for change can feel like a threat to that. Still, some interesting ideas have been suggested. One idea is to focus on solar energy. The desert gets so much sunlight, so why not use it? A few residents already have solar panels to power their homes, and expanding this could help people make extra money while also cutting down on how much they depend on outside resources. Another idea is to grow food in the desert, even though the harsh environment makes it tough. Small farms or permaculture projects could help people grow their own food, making them more self-sufficient. Plus, they could sell the food to bring in some income. Some folks have also talked about starting cooperative businesses, like community gardens, workshops, or small markets. These kinds of projects could give people new ways to make money while keeping the strong sense of community that Slab City is known for. Education and healthcare of Slab City. Getting healthcare in Slab City is difficult because it's so far away from towns and doesn't have the basic things most places have. There aren't any hospitals or clinics in the area, which makes life tough for people living there. If someone gets sick or injured, they have to travel to places like Nyland or Brawley to find help. For those who don't have a working car, this can be a big problem. So, for small health issues, most people take care of themselves or ask for help from neighbors. But when it comes to something serious, they have no choice but to leave and go to the nearest towns, which isn't always easy. Another issue is the lack of clean water and proper sanitation. People in Slab City have to bring in water from other towns, and their toilets are often homemade. This makes it easy for germs and diseases to spread. Things like infections and illnesses caused by dirty water are common worries. The summer heat also makes things worse because people can get dehydrated or have heat-related sicknesses. Since there's no system to handle trash, garbage piles up, which adds more health risks for the residents. There have been some efforts to help, like mobile clinics or doctors who volunteer to come to Slab City. These visits help a little, but they don't happen often and aren't enough to fix the bigger problem. Sometimes nonprofits or groups come to provide medical care, but those visits are also rare and don't cover everything. While the people in the community try to help each other as much as they can, the lack of health care is still a serious challenge that affects everyone living there. Education in Slab City is tough because there aren't any schools or learning centers in the area. This makes it hard for families with kids or anyone who wants to keep learning. Most parents teach their kids at home or rely on informal ways to help them learn. Sometimes, people in the community work together, sharing what they know and using what few resources they have. This makes learning more personal and flexible, but it's also difficult because there's no official curriculum or enough supplies to go around. For adults, learning is more about picking up skills they need to live in Slab City. People often teach each other through workshops, group lessons, or simply by doing things together. Common topics include setting up solar panels, collecting water, and living sustainably. But since there isn't much access to books, the internet, or trained teachers, it can be harder to learn new things or improve existing skills. One way to solve these education problems could be by creating a community learning center or library. This space could offer books, learning materials, and internet access for everyone. It could also be a place for workshops and skill-sharing events, helping people keep learning and growing. If outside organizations or volunteers got involved, they could bring in more resources, support, and expertise. Mobile libraries, internet stations, or visiting teachers could make a big difference by offering more opportunities for education. Speaking of the people who live here, Slab City has a unique way of life and traditions that you won't find anywhere else. Stay with us to learn more about that next. Slab City landmarks and attractions. One of the top spots that draws visitors to Slab City is Salvation Mountain. It's hard to miss when you're entering the area from California State Route 111. This colorful hill stands about 3 stories tall and is completely covered in layers of latex paint, concrete, and adobe, with Bible verses scattered all over. The creation of Leonard Knight, a resident of Slab City, Salvation Mountain, took him around 2 decades to complete. Standing 50 feet tall, it's a massive piece of religious folk art that has become an unofficial symbol of the community, giving it an identity centered around anarchic creativity. In 2002, Salvation Mountain was honored as a Congressional National Folk Art Treasure. Interestingly, the current version of Salvation Mountain is the second one built on the site. The first one, which Knight started in 1984, collapsed in 1989 due to unstable materials. But that didn't stop Knight because he rebuilt the mountain using stronger materials, like adobe mixed with straw. Leonard Knight passed away on February 10, 2014, after spending his final days in a nursing home. He made his last visit to Salvation Mountain in May of 2013, and news outlets covered the visit. Another spot that pulls people in is East Jesus, a unique art installation and experimental living space. The name East Jesus doesn't have any religious meaning. It's just a saying for a place out in the middle of nowhere. This off-grid location has no municipal utilities. In early 2007, Charlie Russell decided to leave his job in technology, pack up his things, and send them to a field full of trash. There, he began to surround his 2 cars with sculptures, eventually renaming the site East Jesus. Russell, also known as Container Charlie, passed away in May 2011. After his death, the Chasteris Foundation, a non-profit formed in 2011, took over the project, guiding its development and curating new additions to East Jesus. East Jesus is home to all kinds of experimental art, like live events, performances, music, photography, and especially sculptures. The art is always changing, with new pieces constantly added, but they tend to wear down pretty fast because of the desert's harsh conditions. Even though there are people looking after the place, the art doesn't stay the same for long. One volunteer described the vibe of East Jesus, and really, all of Slab City, as a salvage punk attitude. The pieces here are always decaying, evolving, or growing in some way, which makes it different from the usual art galleries. It's a reflection of the extreme weather and the huge number of artists who've contributed to the space. Back in 2014, the people living there were giving dozens of free tours, and they would host visiting artists and let guests stay overnight. Then there's The Range, an open-air nightclub that has a stage, lights, amplifiers, and speakers, but it also has worn-out couches and old chairs for seating. Every Saturday evening, around dusk, locals and visitors gather there for a talent show. It's not just the full-time musicians who get to perform. Anyone can jump on stage and show off their talents. The place is run by William Ammon, also known as Builder Bill, who has been a longtime resident of Slab City. His wife, Robin Ammon, collected old prom dresses so people could wear them for prom nights, since many of the residents never had the chance to attend one in their younger years. But despite the fun and community spirit, Slab City isn't exactly the safest place. In fact, it might be one of the least secure places around. Future prospects for Slab City. The future of Slab City is something people talk about a lot, with many different ideas and guesses about what might happen. One of the biggest topics is the possible sale of the land by the California State Lands Commission. The state actually owns the land, and any money made from selling it is supposed to go to the California State Teachers Retirement System. If they sell the land, it could change the whole way the community works, and that's worrying to some residents. To make sure that doesn't happen, a group of people in the community created the Slab City Community Group Incorporated to look into buying the land and keeping it in their control. There are also some efforts happening to improve things like living conditions and the way the place is set up. One big idea is to use more renewable energy, especially solar power. Since the desert gets a lot of sunlight, solar panels could be a great way to provide steady power to people's homes. Some residents are already using solar energy, and if the community expands this, it could help them rely less on outside resources and make life better overall. Another issue that needs attention is waste management and protecting the environment. Since there's no formal trash collection, there's a big problem with trash building up and old vehicles being left around. Some people in the community are taking action by cleaning up and encouraging recycling. If they could create a more organized way to manage waste, it would not only help the environment, but also make the place healthier to live in. Public and media perception of Slab City. Slab City has caught the attention of several news outlets, each covering the place from different perspectives, often shining a light on the unique way of life and the struggles people face there. For example, the New York Times has written a lot about the community, diving into topics like how people in Slab City form their own social structures, how they live by their own rules, and the strong feelings against the government. These articles often point out the poverty in the area and how different social classes exist in the community, while also showing how living off the grid is a big part of their way of life. The Los Angeles Times has also reported a lot on Slab City, especially about the differences between snowbirds and the people who live there year-round. They've written about how people of different ages and genders interact, how living without many rules feels freeing, and how important basic services like clean water and medical help are to the community. The idea of living off the grid and forming a tight-knit community is something the paper often talks about too. Anthropologists have studied Slab City as well, digging deeper into the social dynamics. They've found that even though people in Slab City don't like traditional systems, there's still a social hierarchy in place. They also point out how snowbirds help keep the local economy running, which is a big part of how the community survives. When the media covers Slab City, they often highlight these contradictions, showing both the freedoms people have and the tough realities they face. There have also been a number of documentaries and short films made about life in Slab City, giving people a closer look at how residents live. One well-known documentary, The Last Free Place in America, produced by Endeavor, shows different slabbers and the highs and lows of their everyday lives. The film touches on the lack of basic services like running water and electricity, the extreme weather, and the strong sense of belonging people feel in the community. Even though life there is tough, the filmmakers found that the people living in Slab City really cherish their freedom and the one-of-a-kind lifestyle it offers. Slamunity, a short documentary filmed over 2 days in May of 2021, gives another look at life in Slab City. The film captures the colorful and diverse nature of the community, showing how creative and resourceful the residents are. The filmmakers were struck by the strong sense of togetherness in Slab City and the way people make do with what they have. They came away believing that the city is a perfect example of how humans can adapt and survive in tough situations. Why is Slab City the Last Free Place of America? Is another documentary that takes a closer look at the lives of the people who live there. The filmmakers explore the backgrounds, lifestyles, struggles, and hopes of Slab City's residents. They noticed the stark contrast between Slab City and the nearby military bases and how the two worlds sometimes interact. The film suggests that Slab City is a unique experiment in living differently, where people make their own rules and culture. Some well-known figures have also shared their thoughts on Slab City, giving even more insight into life there. Ranger Rick, a filmmaker from Louisiana, spent 2 weeks living in Slab City and documented his time there for his YouTube channel. He described the people as unconventional souls who had come together to form a close-knit community where independence, self-expression, and simple pleasures are valued. Despite the area's dangerous reputation, Rick found that the community was made up of all kinds of people, all drawn to the idea of living an alternative lifestyle. Ben Fogle, a broadcaster and adventurer, also spent time in Slab City for his TV show Ben Fogle and the Lost City. He expressed concern about the impact of shining too much of a spotlight on the community, worried it might lead to an influx of tourists and more interference from authorities. Fogle called Slab City an extraordinary place, where residents are almost completely disconnected from the outside world, even referring to it as Babylon. He noted that many of the residents were more focused on having food and shelter than on the outside world's problems. DNA, a gender-fluid artist from San Diego, shared his reasons for choosing Slab City as his home during an interview for the show New Lives in the Wild. He explained that the freedom and lawlessness of the community appealed to him, as it allowed him to live without societal restrictions and express himself however he wanted. Thanks for watching. See you in our next video.